All right, yeah, so I'm Kyle Moore, as Dr. Bradley said. Graduated in 2014. During my time at, he's signaling to somebody, yeah, come on in. Bring your longboard. During my time at Baylor, I got to do a couple different entrepreneurial things. So I graduated with a degree in entrepreneurship from the business school. Looked a little bit differently than this when I was there, so this is pretty sweet. You guys are pretty lucky. During my time at Baylor, I got to spend 6 to 7 weeks living in East Africa. So I lived in Kenya, and I worked on a farm there where we were raising cattle that we could trade. And we were also helping kickstart a beekeeping operation. So the purpose behind all that was to help create jobs and also to make connections with the people. And so that's what I did while I was there, spent time just getting that rolling and then really investing and getting to know the people there. I got to work at the local school, got to play with the kids, but play some soccer with them, some volleyball, and also got to do church with the kids on Sundays, which was pretty sweet. Another opportunity I had was to work in downtown Chicago. So Packmore, the company you're going to hear a little bit more about, is based out of the Chicagoland area and Indianapolis area. That's where I was born and raised, and where we're still headquartered right now. But worked in downtown Chicago, and on a project where we were helping to alleviate the issue of food deserts. So if you've heard of that, it's basically there's areas in big cities especially where there's a big malnutrition problem, and that's because there's no grocery stores. So these people don't have access to fresh produce, fruits and vegetables. And so worked on a project that was pretty smelly, threw away a lot of rotten fruit, and cleaned a lot of nasty dumpsters as we were trying to sell this fruit, and it was working well and also working really poorly sometimes. So that's a little bit about my time at Baylor. I did that and then graduated. I then got a job working for a company up in the Midwest where I was selling seat belts, and I also met my wife there. She's not a Baylor grad, but is soon becoming a big Baylor fan. And so then after a couple of years of working there and getting sick of sitting behind a desk, I got the opportunity to come back and work for the family business. So to give you a little bit about Packmore, just a broad overview, very broad, we're a contract food manufacturer. So we basically blend and package primarily dry food ingredients, so sugars, starches, things like that. We mix them together, we stick them in a bag. We sell them to different companies like Kraft, Nabisco, Wrigley. Stuff that you eat on a daily basis has more than likely some of our stuff in it. So that's who we are as Packmore. But all those things tie together through, well, one or two things. We exist for the purpose of investing in people. So the point of our business is to create jobs, and so that's what we were doing in Kenya. When we were selling the fruit in Chicago, we were doing the same thing. So we were helping these guys and girls who were coming out of the prison systems, who were coming out of drug rehab facilities, and we were employing them to sell these fruits and vegetables. And so that's what I got to do in a different way, and then I got to come home to the family business and do the same type of thing there, and that's what we're doing at Packmore. And so my dad's going to talk some more about that, so I want to introduce you to him. So this is Bill Moore. He's the founder and CEO of Packmore, and if you could give him a warm Baylor welcome with me, that'd be awesome.
Hello, hello. Oh, great. Good to have you guys. It's like we need to shift all of you over here so we can go like this and work one direction. So that's sweet of you guys. Thank you. It just makes our life so much easier to look in one direction, doesn't it? Thank you guys. Very kind of you. Yes. So hey, I want to start off, and I want to give you a taste of what Kyle just said in a really short video clip, and then I'll get rolling with some talking. But I want you to catch this video clip and hear about Packmore a little bit from a different perspective.
My name is Jamie Wright. I'm a national account manager, and I started here in October of 2007. When I first came to Packmore, I was young, right out of college. I was a 21-year-old kid that just started making some money and had this image or view of what a man was supposed to be from society's view, from the world view, and these goals that I wanted to attain in terms of having a home or all these materialistic things that I thought would define me. That ultimately, those views crumbled my friendships, my marriage, my family life. Really me, it was very hard to live with that type of mentality. And growing up, being here at Packmore, having the guidance and the leadership from men like Bill Moore and Chris Beckermeyer and just these spiritual leaders that, without them, I don't know where my life would have gone. I look at where I'm at now. Today I have an incredible marriage. I'm a father to a 2-year-old son. I have another one due in a few weeks. It's the type of life transformation that I would just pray that other people at other companies would get to experience one day. It's been fun. It's been many years of just growth and wonderful leadership that it's hard to define. It really is.
So Jamie came to our family. My oldest son introduced me to Jamie. Jamie had just gotten sort of into the marketplace as an employee, but Jamie had a really difficult background. He had just left his family faith, which was Islam, and he had just become a Christian. I mean, he literally had just accepted Christ and left his family. So he was feeling a lot of abandonment at that time. We didn't have any idea this was what he was going through. And at the same time, we realized that his father, who had left him years early, had also abandoned him. So he was experiencing a loss of a father and his entire family when Jamie first came to work for us. We didn't know that. We just thought Jamie was a good salesman and a happy guy and a cool guy to be around. And what we experienced wasn't that. What we experienced was a young man with a lot of turmoil. And he was really struggling. He had a really difficult time working in a corporate setting because he had all this turmoil in him. So typically men like me would say, that young man needs to find success somewhere else, right? And so we would help usher him into a new opportunity outside of Packmore. But that's not what we did, because there's a group of guys there that really understood, including me. My father left when I was 1.5 years old. So I certainly understood what that felt like, and I had a heart for him. But there were a lot of other men in our company that had a heart for him, that had learned through their faith process what it was like to be in that situation, and mentored him. And over the last 10 years, we've watched Jamie go through divorce, life transformation. Now he's got a family, kids, and he's really a very productive young man. And so that's the backdrop of what we want to talk about to you, is what does it look like for Christians to be in the workplace, And so the question that I hope to answer for you today is going to look like this. How can your job become one of the places where you can best serve God? How does that place that you work be the place where you can best serve God? And this is difficult typically for Christian kids, Christian young people coming out of college. This is a challenging answer if your faith is serious, right? If you're really pursuing God, it's an interesting issue for you. This will be a challenge for you because it's going to stretch you. You're not going to be sure where you really belong. If you don't wrestle with your faith and you don't really care much about your faith, there's another way to look at this topic, and that is, how do I want to serve mankind? Where can I best serve mankind, and how can I do that well? So even if you're not a faith-based person, this question can be a challenging question for you from that perspective. So you're probably asking, who are we, right? Who are these Packmore guys? They're a bunch of nobodies coming on Baylor's campus talking to you about something that doesn't matter. Well, we're actually just a small manufacturing company based in Indiana. I started the company in 1989. We do about $40 million of food manufacturing. We have 2 plants and a technology lab. We have almost 400 employees now. We run 24 hours a day. 6 days a week. We're closed on every Sunday. We've never operated on Sunday. Our customers are people like Mars and Cargill and General Mills, Nabisco, all good customer of ours. We produce products like pea protein. So if you look on labels and start reading labels right now, this is one of the hottest proteins. Pea protein, buy pea protein, all right? It's really, really good, very good protein. So it's non-allergenic, it's non-GMO, it's gluten-free, and it's organic, all right? So really, really good. Matches all the key things you guys want as millennials. So these are types of things we do. We also do protein inclusions, so dairy inclusions and things like that go into bars, phosphate starches, bakery goods, that type of thing. The technology we use is dry blending, spray drying, extrusion, and we have retail packaging and that type of thing. So that's kind of just a high view. Is it not working well, Kyle? Keeps flashing on us. Well, we'll keep going. This is our mission, and this is kind of an odd mission for a company that does what we do, right? It's fueled by employee life transformation. Packmore is going to be strategically establishing global food processing centers in low-income communities to provide what? Jobs, food, and hope. So this is a really critical part of what we believe and what we do. And so and the life transformation piece is critical, but food processing is also critical. So, and you got to decide where you're going to do that. Low-income communities is where we go. So you can see that's how we got to Uganda. Low-income communities, it's a place where people need food, and that's where processing can be done. Is an easy attraction for us to go into that place. But this is what we live and breathe every day. So our strategy is what's unique. This is an employee strategy that you don't typically see. So most businesses don't have an employee strategy. They have an employee retention strategy. They have an employee growth strategy, but not how am I going to reach or help transform my employees, right? There's usually a training strategy, skill ladders, that kind of thing. But this is a strategy we use to truly reach and transform the lives of our employee. First, we got to train them for business results. So you can imagine when a third of our employee population is coming out of prison. They're coming from work release. So we have people literally coming out of prison during the day, coming and working, and then going back to prison at night. That's it. That's their life. And so if we don't provide a job, what they do, they stay in prison all day. So we have a third of the population that will come out. So they have very little life training skills. They have very little business skills. So we have to do some business training right away and get them up to speed on how to do what we do. So that's our first level of touch. Then we try to help them climb what we call a skill ladder so they develop those skills and increase their earning capacity. Because everybody's earning capacity has to increase. That's a critical part of everybody coming there. They've got to increase their earning capacity. So most of these guys cannot live on a minimum wage. It's just not going to make it for them. So, but we've got a path for them to get up that chain quickly. And the third thing we do is create meaningful relationships with them. So, and this is where the division in most companies start. This is where the split normally starts to happen, right? My oldest son works for Microsoft. So he's got an MBA from Owen Business School in Vanderbilt. He's out at Microsoft right now. And if you are a nerdy type guy or sort of a real egghead kind of guy and you love that space, that is the place for you, because Bill Gates created the Mecca. It is the nirvana for guys that love tech and don't like to communicate with people. So, I mean, it's like the perfect spot, right? So Taylor calls me daily and says, Dad, this place is brutal because people don't talk to you. They don't communicate with you. They don't work with you. They don't tell you how you're doing. They don't have an investment in your life. Well, that's Microsoft, you guys. One of the fastest growing, most economically viable companies in the world, right? And that's what it's like to work there. And that's common. Life transformation is not happening. It's not going to happen. That's not why they have you there. They want to exploit all your knowledge to build technology. That's their purpose. And they give you a place where you can come do that and get rewarded for it. But to grow there as a human being and to develop relationships, that's not why you're there, right? We have a different purpose. And it's for you to come in and build meaningful relationships with us and us with you so that your life starts to change and you address the things that are really holding you back and what's going on in your life. And so that's a big difference that you'll see is very unique. You will not find a lot of companies taking that strategy because it's expensive and it takes a lot of time. So this is where we start to divide. And what do we do after that? Once you build a relationship with somebody, you're going to find out people that operate in the bottom 1/3 of the economic strata. You know, when you go to Walmart and you're laughing and you're pointing at people and you're saying, oh my gosh, can you believe what I'm looking at? Those people work for me, right? They do. And we don't laugh about that stuff. It's not that funny, right? Because these people have a lot of issues in their life. They have a lot of things going on. There's a lot of stuff that's not going well in their life. And somebody's got to help them. Somebody's got to help them, right? So the question is, do you want to help them? Is that the kind of place you would want to serve? Would you want to reach those kind of people? Would you want to take care and love and help transform the lives of those kind of people? Not many people do. We do. So we believe God's empowered us to build manufacturing plants where we can attract that kind of people and help them with life transformation. So the only way to do that is you got to build meaningful relationships with them, and that's what we do. And typically once we get to that point, we realize they have life issues. And those life issues range an entire gamut of my children aren't my children, and my past boyfriend's trying to take my children from me. I don't have beds. I don't have a home. I have no food. I don't have any place to stay. My family doesn't want me there. I beat up my mom last week. I'm addicted to meth, crack. I mean, you just go on and on and on. I can sit here for an hour and tell you stories of all those things that are going on. Those are the life issues that we get introduced with daily at our plants. And the question is, do you want to tackle those issues, or do you just want to ignore them and get people and move on and rotate them through the business and keep on going? right? And so when you go to Africa and you say, I want to be a missionary in Africa, what do you think you're going to encounter? Exactly the same thing, right? Exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same way. They have all those same issues. And so if you say the pinnacle of work is being a missionary, and you want to be a missionary, you don't have to go to Africa to do that. Just come to one of our manufacturing plants, and you'll find exactly what you're going to find in Africa right there. And you're going to find that in all the manufacturing plants in the United States. The question is, how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to tackle that, right? So we jump into those life issues, and we create solutions. We have a lot of resources internally that help us attack those issues, and we attack those issues. And when we do that, it opens the door with some of those people to introduce Jesus Christ. Not everybody. In fact, not many. But there are some that do. Some that will let you in, and some that will say, wow, you guys have done so much for me. I want to move in a different direction with my life. And so when we have that opportunity, then we help walk them. And we typically try to do is get them back to their church of origin. That's typically what we try to do. So we see a lot of people that come from the Catholic Church. We don't try to convert them to Protestantism, right? And some people are Jewish, some people are Muslim. We try to get them back to their church of origin because that's where we think they're going to get connected and they're going to develop spiritually. And so we do that a lot. We point people back in that direction and we help them significantly. So, and then after they have that experience, a number of those people will come back and you'll see them start to transform. You'll see their life change and they really become different, remarkably different, right? And Jamie is one of those guys. Jamie was one of those guys that would go around my office and be very disruptive if his commission check wasn't right. He'd be very disruptive if he didn't get the account he wanted. He was a very disruptive guy. When he got his life turned around, he's now an incredibly productive guy. He's one of the only sales guys that consistently hits his goals every month and has a great attitude and continues to drive the business ahead. He's got a beautiful family. But that's because the Christ in him started to come out and he was empowered to live that way. And now we see a guy like him helping other people in the company and outside the company. And it's really outside the company where we see the greatest transformation. So this is our employee strategy. This is how we go about doing what we do. And the question is, what are our spiritual tactics? I get asked this a lot. So if you're doing Jesus stuff in the workplace, how do you do that? Like, what's going on with the Jesus thing, right? Well, one thing we don't do is stand up front with a Bible and preach and say, you know, you're all going to rot in hell if you don't accept Jesus today. That's not our typical way of reaching people. We build relationships with people. That's number one. We have chaplains. We have 7 chaplains that work in our plants. So for 400 people, 7 chaplains is a lot of chaplains. We spend about $120,000 a year on chaplains. For a company of our size, that's a giant portion of our budget. So, you know, if you were to take somebody like Chick-fil-A and see what % they spend on chaplains, it's a much smaller fraction that we spend. We spend a high percentage on this because the chaplains have a huge impact. So what does a chaplain do? Chaplains work in our orientation meetings. They introduce the company to the employees, but that's the place where they introduce all of the life things that are going on in that community. So in one community like Morgan County and Indiana area, they'll introduce them to how do you get childcare, how do you get food, how do you find beds, clothing, and all that stuff from the community. They'll introduce that. So there'll be a lifeline for that employee back into the community services that are available and then back to Packmore. So our chaplains are the first line of defense on dealing with life issues that people have. That's where people get connected. And so we don't start introducing Christ into those people's lives until we've really helped them get connected. We do lunch groups a lot where people come in for lunch and they learn about stuff. And sometimes those lunch groups have nothing to do with Jesus. Most of the time they don't. But a lot of times they're about, hey, what do you think of God? You know, have you ever thought about him? What do you think about people who have bad things happen to them? Does that mean there's not a God? We'll talk about bigger issues to help introduce spirituality. So we do these lunch groups and we do Bible studies. We have prayer groups. We have prayer going on a lot. There's a lot of prayer groups that happen all around the plant, just ad hoc by people that like to do that type of thing. And it's really neat to watch. We have weekly and monthly praise and worship, and then we have community outreach. So this is the typical strategy we follow. It looks a lot like a church, doesn't it? Kind of looks like something you'd see from a church, doesn't it? Yeah, well, that's because we are a church, right? We're the part of the bigger church. So this is the other question people ask me all the time. Is this stuff you're doing legal? Like, aren't you going to get sued? Shouldn't you go to jail? I mean, can you really say the name of Jesus in the workplace? And the answer is unequivocally yes. You can say the name of Jesus and you will not go to jail at all. There's 3 key parts of our legal system that protect you. The first is the First Amendment. I mean, I hope you've read the First Amendment, right? But the First Amendment talks about freedom of religion, right? It says there is a freedom of religion in this country, and you cannot obstruct people's freedom of religion. That's a big deal, you guys. That was clarified in 1964 by the Title VII Civil Rights Act. They clarified that. They not only said, do you have religious freedom? They said, in the workplace, you have religious freedom. In fact, it's against the law for an employer to impede your practice of faith in the workplace. So they clarified that, and it's very clear. In the 80s, in 1983, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act was passed. The Clinton administration, they went even further to define what it meant to have freedom of religion in the workplace. So it's been so clearly defined in the law that you can possibly find a way to make it illegal unless you're unfair to your employees. So it's incredibly legal for you to have faith in the workplace. And you will find it everywhere, you guys. There is a lot of people practicing their faith in the workplace. The only thing is you have to be equal. So if you're going to bring Christianity to the workplace, if a Muslim wants to bring their faith in, you have to let them do that. Jewish people, you have to let them do it. Buddhists, you have to let them do it, right? So, so you just have to be fair and equal with people in that. And you have to give, everything has to be voluntary. So it's incredibly legal to bring Christ into the workplace. So don't let anybody tell you that it's not, and stop being afraid, all right? Get that off your mind, right? Public schools, why do they not have religion in schools anymore? Because it's a public school, right? Private schools can have them. Private companies can too, right? So we're just like that. We're a private company, so we can have Christ in the workplace. It's legal. So, so don't worry about that. Here's the next question that gets often asked when I bring this subject up. Well, if I'm leaving college and I'm a real Christian, what is the most spiritual thing I can do? And most people say, the most spiritual thing I could do, the greatest expression of my faith from going to Baylor, where my parents poured money into my Christian religious education, is to become a missionary, right? I need to go to Africa because that's the greatest expression. And then the step down from that is, well, I don't really feel called to be a missionary, so I'll step down one notch and I'll go work in a church. And then the step down from that is I'll go work at a nonprofit like Red Cross, right? And then the step down from that is maybe I'll go into teaching. And then the final bottom of the pyramid in terms of spiritual is I'll go into business. And you have tanked when you've gone into business, right? Like a business guy is spiritually dead. So this is the hierarchy we were often taught, isn't it? This is starting to get real, isn't it? We hear this all the time from college students. This is what we're being taught, is there's this spiritual hierarchy, and it's implied. It's never really spoken. It's just implied that this is what's going on. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. This is not true. There's nothing in the Bible that says that spiritual hierarchy is real. There's nothing. This is not true. There is no spiritual hierarchy. The business guy is every bit as spiritual as the missionary. They work in the same place. There's one Christ. There's one Holy Spirit, right? There's one God. There's one faith. And it's for everybody. There was one Great Commission, right? And it was for all of us. It doesn't matter what you work in, right? So this is not true. And that's the primary message you should leave with today is you do not have to live in a spiritual hierarchy if you choose not to go to work in a church or a missionary role. When you go into business and you want to go into that space, you can be a Christ-centered employee and bring Christ into that workplace every bit as much as you can being a missionary in Uganda. In fact, what we found is about 80% of our employees don't even know who the Jesus Christ is. And I'll bet you're going to find the same thing. When you go out and start exploring the workplace and you intentionally not go to Christian workforces, avoid the Christian company, and you go start asking and ask them, do you have any idea how many people are Christian in your workplace? They're going to say, oh yeah, there's probably 80% Christian. It's not true. There's a lot of people who went to church as a young person that have absolutely nothing to do with faith anymore. No Christianity. So your workplace now is probably a lot like ours. There's very little Christianity in America in the workplace anymore. So the question is, how's the pastor going to reach that guy if they don't go to church? Anybody know, is attendance in the churches rising or dropping? It's dropping, and it's dropping dramatically, and especially in your age group. It's dropping dramatically. More churches are closing than are opening right now. It doesn't feel that way, does it? Because the big box churches in the Texas area seem like they're exploding, like they're birthing children, right? Well, Texas is a bubble. It's a bubble. This is not what the rest of the country looks like. There's a big, huge drop-off. Christianity is on the decline in the United States. And the place where you're going to reach people is in the marketplace. That's where they go to work. If you go to church and try to reach the lost aren't in church. They don't go there. If 80% of them are in the workplace, the best place to reach people are in the workplace. You have 8,274 more times to reach somebody in the church, for Christ in the workplace than you do in the church. So we as guys that work in the business place have a far greater opportunity to reach people for Christ in the workplace than a pastor ever will. The pastor's preaching to the choir typically. They've already come to know Jesus, right? So our responsibility then is to say, hey, can we reach people in the workplace for Christ? Absolutely we can. Yes, we can, and we have a far bigger chance of reaching those who are lost. And so these are the directives that God gave us to do that. In Genesis 2, God built us to work. Did you guys read that? When he built a garden, he looked at the garden and he said, the stuff in the garden's not growing. Why is it not growing? Because there's no man to work the garden, and then he created man. That's when the creation story is told. And then where did he place man? In the garden. To do what? Work the garden. So what do you think our purpose is? It's to work the garden, right? So God made us to work, didn't he? Made us to work. Where did Jesus find his first disciples? Fishing. They were fishing. Jesus went to the workplace to find fishermen, not to the synagogue, right? He went to the fishermen to find his disciples, not to the synagogue. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? So Jesus went to the workplace to find his disciples, not the synagogue. Crazy. God built us to work. That's where we find most people. The second thing is Matthew 28. This is where we hear from Jesus. God made us to work. Jesus called us to make disciples. Go, make disciples. Baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And you're supposed to go there, all the nations, and do that, right? That's what he tells us. He commands us to go to all the nations. We're to go make disciples. Did he say, but not in the workplace? You go make disciples, but don't do it in the workplace because it'll be outlawed and you won't be able to do that there. That's not what he said, did he? He said, go into the world and make disciples. And he modeled that by going into people's workplaces and making disciples. So it makes sense that that's where we would go, doesn't it? It makes sense that that's the kind of disciples we would be because that's what we're called to do is to go make disciples. And we're all called to that. That wasn't just a mandate for the 12. That was a mandate for every Christian. So the question you got to be asking yourself right now is, am I really a Christian? Or did I just come here because it's Texas and everybody's Christian? And it's just cool to say I'm Christian because that's what you say here, right? So are you really a Christian? Is this stuff really ringing with you? Are you really hearing this? Is this making a difference for you? That's what you got to be asking yourself, right? Because if I'm saying this to you and right now you're just yawning and saying this is so boring, this doesn't matter to me, you got to be asking yourself, am I really a follower of Christ? Is this really what he's called me to do? Because this is what he's called us all to do. This is what he's calling you to do. Go make disciples. And then he said in Acts chapter 2, I'm going to send the Spirit. He said, wait, don't leave this place. Wait here until I send what? The power of the Holy Spirit to fill you with the power to be what? My witnesses. So he said, I want you to be a witness, and then I'm going to give you the power to be a witness. In Ephesians chapter 2, we find out where that power comes from. It says, when you are sealed at the time of your belief, you're filled with the Holy Spirit. At the time you accept Christ, the Holy Spirit's put inside of you to do what? To empower you to go make disciples. So the question is the Holy Spirit inside of you empowering you to go make disciples? Are you feeling that? Are you hearing that? And then you got to say, is the only place I can do that as a missionary or pastor, an NGO, or a teacher? And I'm saying to you today, the business place, the marketplace, if you're called to that, is a place where you can have a huge impact to bring people to Christ. Huge. It's absolutely huge. And it's dying for people like us to go into that space. It's dying for us to be there. Let me give you some examples. Sorry about the computer flashing. I don't know why it's doing that. Here's the names of some pretty big companies. Look at this list. Stop it. Standard Oil Company, Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Heinz, Domino's, Coca-Cola, Wendy's. You ever seen that list? You ever seen that list with those men's name on it? Every one of those guys, born-again believers, sold-out Christian men, give up their life for Christ, and this is what they were called to create. That's a pretty cool list, isn't it, you guys? And look at that. And look at the amount of money those guys have generated, the amount of jobs they've generated, the number of lives they've touched because of the businesses they've created. That's a powerful testimony to what you can do as a Christian business leader is what those people have done. That's a powerful list. And that is a scratch on the surface because these guys don't show up on the list. They don't show up on Fortune, right? You don't see this in Fortune magazine that says, hey, let me give you the top 500 Christian leaders that have a huge impact on the world through their faith. You're never going to see that, right? Christianity Today doesn't even do this kind of list, right? They just don't see this kind of stuff. Here's another list. What do marketplace Christians do? What do people do? Here's some things if I had anything I really hope you'd stare at is this list right here. because this is the place where you can play. If you're saying, I don't feel called to be a missionary, I don't feel called to go work in the church, this is a place to help you start to define, well, what can I do? What can I do? Where can I play? Number one, you can do what we do. Love your employees and support them. Create life transformation through your workplace. That's one thing we do. That's our strategy. There was only one strategy. Dave Palmer, Purposeful Design. Dave intentionally created a woodworking business in east side of Indianapolis. Builds beautiful furniture, and the only people he hires are guys that are coming out of prison. So these are all prison guys. He puts them to work and builds beautiful furniture and sells it in all the big companies in the Indianapolis area. All these big companies are buying furniture from the guy. It's a beautiful thing to do, right? So he started that. It's a small company. He's probably going to do maybe $400,000, $500,000 in sales this year, probably double that next year. He's got 6, 7 employees, but he started it by himself. He used to be a huge marketing guy doing food marketing, just started that. Jeffrey Johnson, Eastern Star Church. What's he doing? He's decreasing poverty through real estate ownership. This is a church, you guys. Jeffrey Johnson went out and started a company, an LLC of his own, because he couldn't build houses cheap enough with the general contractors in Indianapolis. So he went out and started an LLC, a for-profit LLC. He squeezed all the margin down to a fraction, and he's building homes for less than $120,000 a year, and he's putting people in homes for less than they pay rent in an apartment. And these are people that could not own homes. You want to break poverty in a city? Help that community start to have home ownership. This is a significant move towards decreasing poverty, the transfer of wealth. Home ownership is a transfer of wealth to the next generation. This is a key move. A pastor did this outside his church. He had to get outside of his own church and start a company where he drove a capital solution to deal with an economic problem, right? And everybody says poverty is a social issue. It's not a social issue, it's an economic issue. Used an economic solution. This is a beautiful thing. You should watch this. This is really something to see. He's got rows of homes going up right now, being built right around his church, all around his church, to help put these people in homes at a price cheaper than renting. Next guy, Dave Brown. Most of you guys probably don't know Dave Brown. Dave Brown is the CEO of he's the president of a company called Defenders Direct in Indianapolis. Defenders Direct is the largest installer of ADT systems. They do about $600 million in sales annually, about 4,000 employees. Massively profitable. Dave Brown was brought in from running an eyeglass operation that he started. He runs that company. This guy is a mastermind. He's a strategist. And all he does is move from business to business and help grow those businesses. He explodes them. That's his gift. He's a born-again believer. The guy loves Christ like you wouldn't believe. But his gift is to make businesses explode. That's how God gave him. He gave him this strategy mind where he can take a business that's little and make it big. That's what he does. That's a cool thing to do because he creates all those jobs and they provide a ton of different money into that community. Chuck Ferry, C12, another guy I know. C12 is a coaching community, Christian coaching, CEO coaches. How can you influence people for Christ? Coach CEOs, right? I've been in a CEO group for 7 years. One of the single biggest impacts on the growth of my business, creating jobs to help me love more people, is having somebody coach me. If you're a coach and you have coaching skills, wouldn't that be a cool job for you, is to coach CEOs and help them expand by giving them knowledge they don't have, helping them figure out their emotional problems, right? Sorting through their ceilings and helping them push ahead. That's another way you as a Christian that has talent. If you've got that ability to really help people think and grow, you might have that skill set. That's a place you could have. That's something very unique. More cabbage, Chris Conant. Chris Conant's down here somewhere in Dallas. Chris is a marketing genius. This guy does all social media marketing. He really connected with me and helped me overhaul my website and the way I message and the way I connect through social media. And all of our social media stuff has gone through the roof because Chris is a born-again believer. He sat and listened to me and I told him my life transformation vision. He said, man, you don't have anybody to understand you. I need to help you get connected with what you feel and think in your social media platform. Overhaul the whole thing, put it together. Are you a social media genius? If you're really good at that, Christ can use you. God could use you. You can have a huge impact through social media. That's a platform that's absolutely exploding right now, and it's dying for Christians to jump in, especially you guys, right? This is a place you can have a big impact. Sagamore Institute, Jay Hine, social impact investing, growing inner city businesses. Have you ever heard of that guy, right? Well, Jay Hine was on the Bush camp. It was in the Bush era, and he helped drive the faith initiative to the United States. He helped be part of that whole restoration of Rwanda. Remember all the genocides were going on in Rwanda? Well, Jay Hine started an institute to help do impact investing in communities that are low income. What's impact investing? That's going out and getting rich guys and saying, hey, will you take less money? right? So usually the rich guys want 15% return on their cash. He goes out and says, well, you take 4%. And I'm going to put it in something that's life transformational. It's going to take 10 years to unfold, but you're going to watch a whole bunch of people's lives change. And guess what? You know, a lot of the rich guys are doing now, they're like, put me in. I don't need any more money. I need to do that. Put me in something that has meaning. I want to see lives change. So are you good with money? Are you really good with finance? Then help some of these social impact funds go out and invest. If that's your skill set, that's where you belong. That's where you should go. That's the place where you can best serve God, right? And that's where you'll have the impact. Maybe you're not supposed to be a missionary. Maybe you're supposed to do that, right? And how about provide money and leadership to nonprofits? Anybody know who Jeff Simmons is? Elanco is the largest food or animal health company in the world right now. And Jeff Simmons is the CEO, lives about a mile from me. Jeff runs a program called Edge Mentoring in Indianapolis, and he takes people your age and connects them with mentors. And he started that, and he's got a whole bunch of other programs like that he started. He runs a giant $5 billion company, and at the same time, he's working these programs. This guy takes his talent and his resources from his business acumen and drives it into social programs in the community. But he wouldn't have the platform if he hadn't been CEO of Elanco. Maybe you're supposed to be a CEO, and that's the place you can have the biggest impact. Maybe you're not supposed to be a pastor, but maybe you are. If you are, then you need to be a pastor. But maybe you're not. What if you're not? Then what should you be? That's the question you should be asking right now. Where can I best serve God in the job that I'm supposed to be in? Where will that be for you? That's the question I would ask you to think about. Baylor's mission is to educate students for worldwide leadership and service by doing what? Integrating academic excellence and your Christian commitment. Are you guys doing that? Are you integrating your academic excellence with your Christian commitment? My guess is you're probably struggling with this. This is really hard to do, you guys. What I'm telling you is when you leave here, it's simply going to change. It's going to be integrating your business place where God called you to work with your Christian commitment. It's just going to simply change the words from academic to business or to ministry or to pastoralship or whatever you're supposed to be in. But that's what you're supposed to do is integrate the two. Integrate the two. You got to be one person. You got to be integral. And this is what God calls you to do. So how will you integrate your work with your Christian commitment? That's the question you should ask yourself right now. As you walk out of here, how am I going to integrate my faith, my Christian commitment with the work that I'm supposed to be in? How am I going to do that? That's a tough assignment, you guys. But you don't want to leave that there because when you get to my age, you're going to turn around and say, how did I use my life? How did I use my life? What did I do with the time God gave me? You're going to ask that question. And if you don't think about it now, by the time you get to my age, you're going to turn around and go, oh, man, I didn't do anything. This is terrible. Now you're going to try to make it up in the last half of your life. And trust me, it's not that easy to do. It's not that easy. It's possible, but it's not that easy to do. So the last thing we're going to do tonight, we're going to close by introducing you to an award that we give out every year. It's one of the reasons we came is we have an award that we give, and we want to introduce you guys to that award. The people that applied for that are in the room, and we've picked a winner for that award, and so we're going to talk about that. It's called the Mojave Innocent Marketplace Missionary Award, and it reflects all the things I just described to you. And so we're going to do that. This is Scott Pothover. He's a good friend of mine. Scott and I have known each other for at least 10, 12 years, maybe more.
12 seems like 20.
20, yeah. So Scotty taught Kyle Bible study, and when we were in Bible study fellowship together, Kyle was in 7th grade. Scotty was his teacher. Scotty and I have been together. We've worked together in Africa a lot. We've made 13 trips to Africa. Scotty leads our leadership, our global leadership development of all our employees. So we spent a lot of time together strategizing on life transformation. And so he's going to introduce you to our award and recognize our award winner. So Scott, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. So part of why we come out here and talk about this is I sat in those chairs, not those exact chairs, but I went to college, was a business major, and the whole time in the back of my head was, is this the right thing? Should I be going into business? Honestly, I think my mom still may be disappointed in me that I'm not a pastor, but I really felt like, no, that's not what I'm supposed to do. And so we come here, and Bill just laid out an incredible presentation that maybe are thoughts and things that you haven't heard before. And we want to really encourage young people in your position to look at your work and your vocation differently. And so this award that we're going to give out is one of the ways that we want to encourage that. And we go through a number of different colleges throughout, mostly the Midwest, to hand out this award. And it's just, exactly, drop the mic. And it's just an opportunity for us to really make you aware of that and to say, hey, there are people out there like us, like Packmore, like Bill, that are going to come behind you and encourage you in that. So who is this Muhabwa Innocent Marketplace Missionary Award thing about? So the guy in the middle is Muhabwa Innocent. Muhabwa Innocent is our employee in Uganda. Those of you who were in class this morning touched on that. Innocent has been working for us for the past 7 to 8 years that we have been in Uganda. And Innocent models exactly what Bill was talking about in terms of having a passion for business, feeling called to lead in business, but over that, he also has this incredible heart for people. So Innocent has done things. So he goes out into the fields. We've been growing amaranth. That's a grain. We now switch into soybeans, but he's been working out in the agriculture industry for years. And what he does is he goes out and he gets with the people. He gets out there and he works with them and he gets to know them. So let me give you some things that Innocent has done in terms of his work with the people. He works with these young boys, and hey, you know what? Young boys in Uganda aren't that much different than young men in America. And so Innocent says, you know what? He walks alongside of them. He says, I'm not going to give you your whole check because you know what? I know what you're going to do. You're going to go to the bar in town. Yes, they have those in Uganda as well. And you're going to drink this away. So I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to give you a little bit now, but I'm going to give you a little bit more later. And he talks to him and he encourages him. He comes alongside him. He said, don't go to the bar and waste all your money. Go home to your wife and be a good husband. Same thing that we need to talk to about those guys that work with us that Bill was talking about. Innocent also has a relationship. He had a relationship with a guy that worked for us, and Innocent was paying him, and he recognized that he changed his name. He had a Christian name, and he changed his name. And in Africa, that means he actually had left his Christian faith. So Innocent had a couple of choices that time. He could just disregard him and say, uh-oh. That's not what Innocent did. Innocent went out and he started to spend time with him. He started to work with him. He started to talk to him. And over the course of literally 5 to 6 months, Innocent individually, single-handedly walked this guy back to his faith in Jesus Christ. Took his Christian name back and is going back to church and went back to his family. That's what happens in the marketplace when you're intentional about living out your faith. And I hope through all the things that we talked about today, that's what you hear, is you have to be intentional in this. There's an opportunity, but you have to be intentional about this. And one last thing, just to give you an idea of who this Innocent guy is. So we, quite candidly, we don't pay Innocent a lot. None of you are going to take the salary that we pay Innocent and come work for us. Not even close, all right? Some of you are probably making about that much in the summer. Innocent not only takes that pay, but he takes almost half of that and has supported, over the last 5 years, he's supported at least 3 people every year to go through university in Uganda. And he's a single guy, 32 years old, and he takes almost half his salary to go pay for some other people who can't afford to go to university because he loves them. And every Sunday, he takes roughly 8 to 12 little kids out of his village. He lives in basically a container, like a rail container. That's where he lives. It's not the slum, but it's close. I've been there. And that's his house. But he takes 8 to 10 little kids with him, ranging from 2 years old to probably 8, and takes them to church every Sunday. It's pretty convicting, quite honestly. But there's not a guy that lives this whole thing out in terms of being a marketplace missionary better than Innocent. And so that's why we named the award after him. And that's why we want to come here and do that. So we had some great applicants. A number of students here are phenomenal and have caught the vision of what living out your faith in the marketplace means. But today, I would actually like to have Annie come forward. Annie Klonlikun, I'm going to say that right, hopefully, and receive the award. So many of you probably know Anne, and she is a senior graduating, and you can come over here. I don't bite. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this is an award. So this is the Muhabwa Innocent Marketplace Missionary Award. And on it is the verse, Acts 1:8, and it says this, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." And that's what this is all about. And so, Annie, congratulations. You're very welcome. And in addition to that, she also gets a gift card, an Amazon gift card for $500. So spend that wisely. So just a little bit about Annie. She has started Crew here on campus, correct? Has been very involved in the Baylor Angel Network. She's vice president of Chi Omega. She has worked over the last couple summers and gone to Kenya, Togo, and Haiti, helping to do a lot of leadership development and work in those emerging markets. And she was just telling me half an hour ago that she has accepted a job at Walmart, which is very exciting, working on analysis of emerging markets, correct? And how they work with some of those emerging markets. Yeah. So bright future and totally gets us. And the great thing that I think as we read through your application is that you understand this connection between work and your faith and the correlation of the two and being intentional about bringing your faith into the workplace. So as you take that award, we just want to encourage you, or we hope that's something that you can look at and as a reminder to say, you know what, I have a purpose. It's to be excellent at what I do, but it's also to be excellent at sharing the gospel. And so we hope that that serves that purpose for you. So congratulations. All right, I think that is all that we have for today, but certainly question and answers. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions now, and we'll stick around for a little bit too if you're shy and don't want to ask publicly. So, Alexander, you got a question? I love it. All right.
How do you compete with companies that don't necessarily adhere to the same ethics, and so maybe they will try to manufacture?
So the question is, how do we compete with companies that do not share our value system? That's a good question. So we compete with other contract manufacturers very well. So it's typically on what your capacity is, what your capabilities are, what your delivery abilities are, what your quality looks like. So our spiritual background has very little to do in that competitive landscape. You know, in fact, if anything, it makes us, I would say, more competitive, but that's a subjective measure. So the real question was, what does our customer say when they experience that, and how do they look at us compared to our competitor? And what I can tell you anecdotally is, for example, somebody like Hershey or Nestle, when they typically come in, they come in groups of 3, 4, 5, typically to our plants. And they oftentimes have long meetings. They want to talk to every function in the organization. What do you do? What do you do? How you do everything you do? And then they get to me, right? And we have a presentation. I talk about our values and our faith and all these things, and and there's usually a couple guys in the room that are kind of like, oh boy, here we go. And there's usually 1 or 2 people that are smiling and staring at you going, wow. And then the meeting ends, and then those 2 people come over and say, you're the reason we work with companies like you, because we trust you. And I guarantee you're going to get work for us because we trust you, right? So when people work with other Christian people that are serious about their faith, and they say stuff like, we're not working on Sunday, and they're going, our plants run 7 days a week, how are you going to manage that? And we say, we'll manage that. They believe you, and they trust you. And that brings us a competitive edge. So we compete incredibly well in that landscape, incredibly well. We lose business, but it's almost always on price. And we don't spend a lot of time in the low margin categories. We just don't play in that space. So did I answer your question? Good, thank you. It was a good question, Alexander. Yeah, others?
Another good story. McLean, which we all know from our football stadium, is a company that has in its mission statement says it's based on Christian values, and you know it was sold to Walmart and then was sold again, and they were kind of encouraging them to change that to ethical principles, and so they went. Grady Rozier, who's been the CEO ever since McLean stepped down, went and talked to some of his customers, and a Jewish customer said, "I'd prefer Christian principles, because ethical principles, I have no idea what that means. But when you say Christian principles, I know what you're talking about." So even a Jewish customer appreciated a very clear mission statement. So sometimes we feel like, well, how are people that are not Christians going to feel about it? But often people can appreciate that in the same way you'd appreciate things about people who you don't necessarily have all the same beliefs with.
Yeah, and I'll tell a similar story. We were doing a trade with Morocco, and they needed a lot of garlic. They needed 20 containers of garlic. It's a lot of garlic. And the garlic in China wasn't coming out very good that year. It was some bad garlic. They had heavy metal issues, that kind of thing, and they didn't want to touch the garlic. So they were calling around. They found us, and they said, hey, can you guys find some garlic for us? Well, we knew some guys in Mexico that had some really good garlic, had some good pricing on it. And I'm on the phone with the guy who's the employee of the king of Morocco, right? And I'm thinking, man, this is close, man. I'm like almost touching royalty here. And I just finally, I'm like, I'm going to take the elephant off the table. I'm going to ask the hard question. I said, why are you working with me? I know you're a Muslim country. I know your king's Muslim. I'm a Christian. Why are you working with me? And he giggled on the other end. He said, oh, that's easy. He said, you guys don't lie. You don't lie. When you make a deal, you stay by your deal. He said, our Muslim brothers, we lie to each other all the time. We just do what we got to do to make money. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. Now, I'm not saying that that's what Muslims do. That's not my words. That was his words, and I don't believe that's true. I've worked with a lot of Muslim guys that are actually good guys. But that was his experience, right? And so his experience was, you Christian guys are good guys to work with because when you say what you do, you do. I can count on your word. I don't have to put it in writing. So that's a big deal, isn't it? It's kind of a cool thought. Yeah. Any other questions? Good questions. Anything else? Alexander, this is great. At least if you guys don't want Alexander to ask questions, you got to ask your own, all right? So, yeah.
So you talked about the rebuilding of employees.
Yeah.
As we go through your journey, what do you do when an employee suffers or an employee breaks trust?
Yeah. Con, you want to tackle a little of that? Or not?
You can start us off.
All right. So you have two choices typically when an employee breaks trust. So for example, we had a receptionist 2 weeks ago that we terminated. She worked for us probably a year, and she was really good. But we found her in her car drinking, and then she had a glass of alcohol sitting by her phone. So we didn't have much of a choice. We had to terminate her. What we said, though, was, Stacy, we love you. And the last thing we want to do is to see you suffer. We want to help you get into a program so that you can change, because you have to stop drinking because you're an alcoholic. And we want that to change for you. You know that, right? And she's crying. She's broken down. She's like, absolutely, I know it. I got to change. Let us help you get into a program. You got to stay sober for 6 months, and then you have a job here waiting for you when you get back, all right? That's how we handled that. That's how we handled it.
Yeah, another one, just a story along those lines. So I'm the first shift production supervisor for one of our facilities. So we've got one south of Indianapolis. We have another one up in Hammond, which is near Chicago. So I talked to a handful of y'all in the classes. So you know, I work directly with about 20 people each day. And when I started as a supervisor, when I started with the company, I actually started at the bottom. So I worked my way up from primarily the folks who are working on our systems are dumping 50-pound bags of product into a tank. Basically, it mixes it up and it comes out on the other end. You put it in a bag. And so I started out doing that. And so I worked with a young man who trained me. Was a great guy, great teacher, great attitude, and was a believer. Is a believer. But came to Packmore like a lot of people do, and was working for us and not for someone else because he had a felony on his record. He'd been in prison, and the large majority of people that work for us were one of the only companies that'll hire people with something on their record. And so we knew he had a drug problem. He and I had talked about it, but he'd been clean. Well, family issues were coming about, and I started noticing some things about him. So you keep an eye on him and finally realize, hey, man, what's going on? How you doing? And so I built this relationship, and I'm not doing so good, man. And okay, talk to me about it. And so, are you clean? If I take you to the lab to go pee in a cup, which is kind of our nice way to say get a drug test, are you going to come out clean? And okay, do you need to go home today? And so we send the guy home. I say, if you come back like this again, we're going to have a really big problem. So he comes back, and he's clean for a while again, right? He's acting normal again. Well, he starts acting funny again. What's going on, man? Tell me what's going on. And we talked about this, and so we'd already given him kind of one strike, and we're like, all right, this really is your final chance. If you're going to get clean, you need to get clean, but you can't come back. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt somebody else. And so long story short, or short story long, he basically he falls back off the wagon, and we don't see the guy again. And the point of me saying this is that I had built a relationship with this guy, and so with this person my dad talked about, he knew her story, right? And so with this guy, I knew his story, and so I could understand his life circumstances. I knew what he was struggling with, and so I had the background to be able to say, what's appropriate for this guy? Do I need to fire him? Is that what he needs? I worked with another guy who's on work release. Again, comes out of prison, comes to work, goes back, and we've given him chance, and he's messing up. These are business problems he's causing us, right? He's constant quality issues coming out of his system. And so finally I said, I know your background, I know you're not getting better, I have to let you go. And with this guy, and so the point of all that is to say, how do you decide what to do with these people? And I'm telling you, the best way, from my experience, it may not be right for everything, but know the people. And if you know the people, you can make a better decision because you understand their context, you understand how they're going to react, you understand just more than the situation you're seeing right there. And so that's how we deal with it, is literally a case-by-case basis. And the only way you can do it by that is to know those people. So if you're working in those areas, know your people. It's really, really important.
And we've got as many stories of people that didn't work out that did work out. So Kayleigh, for example, her husband died right there. He overdosed on heroin. So she's in the driver's seat. He's in the passenger seat. He ODs of heroin. She's strung out on heroin and passed out in their car, and their 3-year-old daughter's in the back seat when the cops pull up. So the cops pull up to a dead person, her passed out, and a daughter lay in the back seat. They took the daughter, put her in foster care, buried the husband, and she went into a drug rehab program, came to Packmore. Kayleigh's been promoted 5 times. Kayleigh's on her way to becoming probably one of the best employees I've ever had. So we've worked through a process with her to transform her life. There's a way to help a drug addict move from point A to success. We do that with people. So we know those programs, we know how to get people into them, and we walk that journey with them. So we have a lot of those success stories too, but there are people that won't stay on, and you have to let them go. You have to, because they're a danger to the rest of the company. It's a dangerous environment. You know, you see those forklifts, right? You got a 10-ton forklift, a guy driving on, he's on heroin. He can kill somebody in a hurry, right? So, but does that answer your question, Alexander? That's just we could stand here for hours telling you those stories, and they're beautiful stories. Yeah. Any others?
To cap that one off, the guy who disappeared, he is alive. He moved to Florida to get away from his family, per our encouragement.
Yeah.
He called us back and to update us and say,
Yeah.
thank you, and if I ever come back, do I have a job? And it's like,
We had another guy that we fired. We have great firing stories. This guy's dad died 3 months after he left Packmore, and he came to the front door. That day, his dad died. He came to the front door. He's standing in the lobby, and he's asking to see me and one of the other guys. We see him. He comes in. He's weeping, and we're holding him. And like, Steve, what happened? And he's like, my dad just died. And we said, well, why are you here? And he said, I didn't have anywhere else to go, and I knew you guys would love me and help me get through this. So you could see Christ in the workplace is a pretty legit deal, right? So for some people, we are the only church they'll ever know. We've had 2 weddings in our plants, right? So we've had people get married. So for some people, we are the only church they'll ever know. We're only Jesus they'll ever see is through what we do, right? So, and you're not going to see Packmore and Christianity today. Ain't going to happen. We're too little. We're a bunch of nobodies. So you don't have to be anybody to serve Jesus. You just got to be who God put you in to be. Yeah. What else, you guys? What other questions? Anything else? Yes.
So I teach in the HR area in management. And so I have a question kind of from that perspective. When you're hiring out of this particular segment, and you, as you said, there's a lot of life issues. Do you have problems getting people from at the beginning, like pulling them in? Do you have a lot of people just disappear maybe in the first week? Or, I mean, and what is your strategy for getting people in and to stick?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Is Kyle better than me?
I don't know. Yeah, so that's a work in progress, absolutely. Like you said, with that pool of people, it's a constant turnover because so many of these folks, we're the only place they can get a job. And so I've recently started doing tours with people. So we're working on making this hiring process better because we get a handful of people in, we kind of wean them out, and then we go to a drug test, and then we get about 2 left. because most won't go to the drug test. And then we get a few people, and then they get sometimes 30 minutes into the job because it's hard work, and they disappear. And so how do we do that? For us, a lot of it is just helping set expectations really clearly. So that's what, like I was saying, I've been doing tours of the plant before they even get into orientation, so that they understand the work. One of the big issues that we run into, especially with these types of folks, is that they have a really high, distrust of authority, as you would imagine. And so as we're orienting them to the company, helping them understand this is a food processing facility, so I'm expecting you to hold up much higher standards. Have you worked at a warehouse before? Yes. Okay. This is different than that, right? I'm going to tell you to pull your hairnet from here to here. It's like a 1-inch difference, and it's going to bug the crud out of you when I keep asking you. And so setting those expectations really clearly has been a big part of that. I'm trying to think of what else we've found success with.
We've one of the places. This is where church and business could really partner well, because that kind of person needs about 10 weeks of boot camp. They need an intensive experience where they can move from prison, where they've been fighting authority their whole life and they've got a massive drug or alcohol problem, or they've got a family of origin issue that's just haunting them, and they need to go through some counseling, and they need to go through some job training. The workforce development training in most of these states is pathetic, right? It's like, here's how you fill out your application, this is what you say on the first day, and it's just pathetic. They don't deal with the issues that person's got in their life, and they need about a good 10 weeks of boot camp to pull them through it. This is where the church could partner with us. And so we've been talking to some of the local churches about that, saying, would you be interested in helping us build a program where we could put employees through your process, you run the process, you help get them through this thing, you go out and get the funding, get these people pushed through it, and then we'll guarantee a job for those people. That's the place where church and companies could start to work together, see some huge things, because we aren't sociologists or psychologists. We're just not. We're just a couple of guys, and there's a bunch of us that work our butt off every day to just love the people. But we aren't. I mean, I got a chemical engineering degree. What do I know about this guy's family of origin issues, right? But they're driving the guy mad, right? He can't undo and unravel the hatred he has for his mom and dad, and he's bringing it to the plant every day. Somebody needs to help him with that. Why is he on cocaine? Well, he's got some problems that came from his family. You got to help him through that stuff. I'm doing the best I can. We need help with that. And that's where the partnerships need to start taking place. So we're trying to start develop that ecosystem, So it's a great question, and it's very perceptive, because that is really the tough issue. They're moving from a place they live that's very dysfunctional, and you're asking them to try to move into a place that requires a lot of discipline. That's a real challenge. Real challenge.
Just to add to that, I do think that that is one area though where we have found some success through experience with these guys. I know my dad has been a part of some different groups that help men and women really process those deeper life issues, to say, okay, I'm mad. Why am I mad? It's not because they said that. It's because there's something that's making me mad that's deeper than that. And so we have a lot of conversations with the men and women like that. We had one young man who, he was literally ready to quit because I asked him to tuck his shirt in. and so we sat him down, myself and one of the other managers, and just talked through it with him. And he was continually about to get up and leave. And the other guy who's been with my dad Adam Rollins, he's been with my dad for 10 years. And one line he said is a tucked-in shirt really the maximum of your emotional capacity? Is that what you want your kids to hear, is that a tucked-in shirt is enough to make you leave and possibly go back to prison? And so helping people sort of snap out of it and go, what are these emotional issues I'm wrestling with? And so if we as employers can help people really wrestle with those issues, and when we do that, it's amazing just the success we find, and we've got stories of that, of people who've wrestled with those and now are finding success in their lives. So focusing on that, I think, is an area that's really invaluable.
It is, and if you've got an inclination towards that area, John Townsend, Henry Cloud have written some great books in that space. They're probably two of the best that focus on those sort of family of origin issues and help you with leadership training in that space. We've all had a lot of training with Henry Cloud and John Townsend to learn to handle some of those emotional issues, but I really encourage you, if that's something you think you can be good at, we need people like that. All of these companies do. Do you think the dysfunction in families is getting worse or getting better? Worse, and dramatically worse in the United States. Do you think social media is helping or hurting with dysfunctional families? It's hurting, right? So you've got a guy that's got a dysfunctional family, and now he doesn't know how to communicate only through text messages. What do you think that's like? That's a really difficult guy to employ. It's a very difficult person to engage. If you think you can help people in those spaces, the world needs people like you badly, right? So we sat with Abby and had lunch today, and she said, I really like working with people. And we're like, man, the world needs people like you, Abby, because most of the world's moving away from helping people. They really are. Most people are like, I like just touching my phone and talking to people digitally. That feels better to me. And when I get near people, it gets kind of messy. Yes, servants of Jesus, we serve dirty sheep, right? You're going to get dirty when you shepherd, right? So if you don't like dirty sheep, don't be a shepherd, right? So just stay on your phone and you won't get dirty, right? So anyway, ready to wrap up?
Yeah, thank you so much. We have some gifts for y'all from Baylor, and I'll give this to you afterwards. But thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope you guys get a good sense. This is I didn't introduce the Baugh Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise. Really sees this role of business as a place where you would never have the opportunities they're having, even though you don't feel always capable of dealing with all the significant issues people are dealing with. I mean, we really appreciate the way you're consistently trying to integrate this. And so thank you for the award, for reconnecting with us, and I hope to continue the partnerships. And we have these kind of programs throughout the semester. We usually have 3 big ones, a few smaller ones, but they're always looking at all different ways that business is playing a role in society to provide employment, to create prosperity, to generate well-being for people. And the integration of the faith component is not something we've addressed as much, so thank you for bringing that to the table today. So we have some sheets here. If you'd like to just be on the list, we do a pretty good job of having our advertising on the board. We always have stuff on the calendar. And so, you know, if you like these kind of talks, and you're maybe business major, or even if you're not a business major, but you just think, you know, understanding how work and faith and dealing with poverty or other types of issues come together, those are the things we try to address. So thank you guys. I know we're all excited about Thanksgiving, and appreciate you guys coming out. And we'll be around, so if you guys want to ask any last minute questions, please do so. So thank you for coming, and thank you guys.